Brand Junkies.
Hey!
What's up?
It's Brand Junkies time!
Brand Junkies.
Ken, you look good today, man. You look like you're refreshed.
Dave, you do too.
Well, it's makeup.
Well, I think we're both looking good in this audio podcast.
Well, yeah, if you're just listening to this, fuck you. Just kidding. We love you. Hey, man. So today, we're going to talk about some company culture stuff or some, workplace culture. By the way, if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, you're like, what is Brand Junkies? Ken and I get together and we talk about marketing and advertising and
business development and working in the business and cultures and anything that deals with your workplace, growing your business.
Yeah. And sometimes we have some really fun guests on.
Today's not one of those days.
Today is not that day.
But we actually have a lot of fun when it's just the two of us. I really enjoy these. So let's jump into what we're talking about, because this is part of our culture, is what we're doing right now.
Yeah, so let's illuminate that. So we've got 13 staff members now, and at the agency, and we've got a pretty good culture, and that's been really intentional on how we build it, kind of the thought process behind hiring. We take a long time to hire. I mean, we're very arduous in our hiring process, and then also we do things strategically throughout the month and each day to really develop a kind of culture that we want.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Why don't you define a little bit, Dave, about what we mean by culture, company culture, workplace culture?
Yeah. So originally, when we started the agency, the idea was we wanted to create a space where we'd want to go to work every day, right? Because you and I have worked at places that were terrible. That we didn't want to go to work every day. We want to be at the office. And so generally speaking, we're like, hey, can we create a space where we would want to show up? Because if we want to show up, then everybody else would hypothetically want to show up too, especially if we hire people that are kind of like-minded to us in some ways.
Yeah, you hope so. I mean, it's easy to say that when you're the top dog in a company and you say, oh, I've created the environment I want. But the people that work with you, underneath you, however you define it, sometimes they don't always have all the amenities and all the things that they're allowed to do. And the culture is not quite the same. But yeah, we've both worked in places where, and I'm sure people listening and whatever out there, you work at places where you don't really necessarily feel happy about going to work. And that's a really sad state of affairs because we spend so much of our time working. And you hear all these gurus and everybody enlightened and new ageism and all this about, hey, really find what you love. And if you find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life and all that kind of stuff. And that's great. And like Joey Cam says, you try to follow your bliss, find your bliss. What is it? If you do that, everything should be effortless effort, right? But the truth of the matter is, it's not always like that. We can't all do what we want and work in the best place. Sometimes you got to be at your desk by a certain time, and you'd rather be at the gym working out, and you got to do things you don't want to do, or work with somebody that you have a personality conflict with, or there's certain rules at the workplace. Not everybody can bring their dog to work. Not everybody can listen to music at work. Even from the littlest thing to the biggest things, there's a lot of parameters that help create a culture and environment that you want to be in. And I think we've done a good job. I know for a fact, I know for a fact that we've done a good job creating a great culture. But there's a lot of people out there who don't even think about what it means to have a culture. They just show up to work, do their stuff. And they also maybe don't realize that even if you're not the top dog, the president or the vice president or whatever you are in a company, you can still affect the culture of a company from the bottom up.
Right.
And even make changes in your own work environment, even if it's not mandated from the top down.
Yeah, there's Ken, you and I read a lot of Eastern philosophy and thought, and there's a person who said, and I can't remember actually who said it now. But the quote is, "How you do anything is how you do everything." And I have kind of, when something like sticks in you and you like it rattles around in your brain a good bit, that's really sunk home to me, because I think about how we do. So just, I think this is going to be key for us to share some of how we create our own culture. some of the things that we do every day. So like every day we have what we call stand up, and everyone in the office gets around and we go, okay.
We literally stand up in a circle. It's like a huddle for a football team.
And we go around the circle and we're like, hey, what do you need help on today?
What are you working on? Do you need any input? What do you need help, assistance, deadlines?
And so Ken and I, because we're the two creative heads and really run the agency together along with our operations manager, we kind of stand up front, and anytime that someone has something, a lot of times it's questions to us, but sometimes they have questions to one another, staff amongst each other, and they're like, hey, how, Katie, can you help me with blank? Hey, Rachel, can you help me with this? And or I have a question, Derek, can you come help me on this side? And so there's always that helping nature, and that's something that we really try to instill, is that this is a team. We all, when one of us is successful, all of us are successful.
We do a similar thing. We have what we call work share, which is when somebody is working on a project and they feel like, hey, I need a little bit of help here. Maybe somebody needs help from our designer, or somebody needs help from somebody who can edit video or even write some copy or something. And they'll stand up and they'll say, hey, I need a little help here. They can freely go to any other person in the agency from the top down, or they can just call out to the room that they're in and say, hey, I need some help. This is what I'm doing. And then they involve themselves in a work share, and everybody kind of gets on board. Everybody feels supported. So hopefully nobody feels isolated or alone in their task.
Yeah, because isn't that a thing that's terrible? When you feel like you're the only one that can do this task and you don't have any help. I mean, that can be not just lonely, that can be devastating to a culture.
I think that's one of the things cultural-wise that can create so much stress in a workplace. When somebody gets a project put on them or an assignment or whatever they do. And sometimes, I don't know, I mean, I know even I, at the level that I work at, sometimes I'll come across a problem or a question or something, and I get lost. And I'm like, I don't necessarily know the answer right now. And when you don't have somewhere to turn, for me, I can just walk into the next office and talk to you, and we can bounce ideas back and forth. But sometimes if you don't have anybody to bounce it off of, it can be an incredible feeling of isolation and also of despair if you don't know what to do or don't know where to turn. And then that creates so much stress, because you start to say, I don't know how to do this job. What are the ramifications? Am I going to get in trouble? What are the consequences here? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to the company? What does it mean? It can just spiral out of control. So I think one of the things that I really like about our company is the culture of collaborativism that we have there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we kind of built the culture based off our core values as a company, and we hire based off those core values. And we also review all of our staff based off those core values. And so we have 6, and if you don't have core values for your company, you should. It really does help.
No matter what you do, even if you work by yourself, you should come up with like somewhere between 4 to 6 different values that you have for what it is that you do. And these aren't values that are necessarily things like, I provide quality service, because everybody wants to provide quality service. Or timeliness, or good customer service, something like that. All that stuff is just standard. You've got to come up with, okay, what does it mean to me to be in business? What humanistic values am I trying to bring to what I do, to the people that I work with, and to the customers that I work with?
Yeah. Yeah. And so for us, when we think about the staff culture, we really want to embody those values.
What are our core values, Dave?
Yeah, and these are in order, actually. And I think that the order is important too for us, because we hire based off that idea as well. So the first
and let me just jump in there. Sorry, Dave. I think it is good. We do hire on that. And one thing we also say at the company is, if you're ever talking to a customer on the phone, we use this metaphor. You should be able to look up at the wall and look at a plaque or a poster that has the company values, the core values written on it. And any question or issue that a customer has on the phone, you should be able to address correctly by looking at the core values.
Right.
The values might not answer the details of, what wattage do they need on this particular electric device, or what color should this be, or anything. But it's going to show you how you should be treating the customer and how you should address the customer. And if you talk to them that way and talk to other people in the company with the core values in mind, you're never going to go wrong.
Yeah. So our core values, in order of importance for us, are tenacity,
curiosity,
innovation, authenticity, accountability, and humanity. And so for us, we see these as really, really important for the work that we do in marketing and advertising. And it works. We feel it throughout the building. And one of the things that, again, we do quarterly reviews for all of our staff. We rate people based on those values. How are they embodying them, right? And if they're not embodying them well, then we tell them that, hey, this is an issue. We need you to step this up. You're doing great on these 4 or these 5.
Yeah, we actually score them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's helpful in the room to say, hey, and for you, myself and Autumn, when we're kind of talking about staff and who we're looking to hire next and who's doing well and who isn't, hey, are they embodying the core values? Which one are they lacking on? And it's a common vernacular that we use, and it really helps us to also point out praise points.
Right.
So that's huge, and then that really helps us understand what do we want to do outside of those core values. How do we manifest those things for the staff, right? So part of our company culture is we have a very fun-loving atmosphere, right? Because part of it is we're a creative company, man. We want to have a relaxed culture as much as possible. So jeans, t-shirts, totally fine. If we have clients coming in, it's a little bit different dress code. But we have people, whenever no clients are around, they're very casual in their dress.
Yeah, in our age, we've seen now with Google and some of the other online companies that have really set new precedents for millennial employment or a new way to look at employment in the 21st century. And everybody's aware of all these Facebook campuses and Google campuses where there's foosball tables and snack bars and kombucha, taps and all the kind of stuff that's fun and supports the lifestyle in such a way. Well, not everybody can afford to do all that kind of stuff. And we as a company, we can't afford to do what Google and Facebook do. But I think, based on a lot of your leadership and what we've been able to do, we've created our own miniature version of that in our office.
Yeah.
I mean, for those that have not been to the Rethink offices, we basically have a couple offices up front where David and I kind of work, and we take care of what we call the front of house. Sometimes we refer to it as the brain. And then in the back, we have the body that does all the work, and that's the back of house. And that back of house area, we've got a refrigerator filled with goodies. We've got some great lighting, great artwork up around the walls. We've got plants around. We replaced one of our walls with this industrial garage with all the windows so we can let the sunlight in. We have a dog that comes to the office every day. And we have a cornhole game that there's not a lot of time to play it anymore. But when we were first getting things going and trying to work, there was some pretty serious cornhole tournaments going on. So we have certain policies in place about time off and having fun at the office and all that kind of stuff, where I think we have created one of those environments where people do want to come to work. They look forward to being at the office. It's not oppressive in any way. Sure, you've got to work. That's the nature of having a job. But to come to an office like ours, and we hear this all the time from people that come visit. We have clients that specifically want to come meet at our office because they literally say, like we had a client the other day that said, hey, I'd like to bring my staff to your office for the next meeting because your office is just so cool. And I was like, yeah, how often do you hear that about other offices? And we have employees that love it, and we have spouses of employees that whenever we're out, they always espouse how cool the office is where their spouse works. So it's always great to hear that. And so creating that environment, both from a physical point of view and then in terms of the attitude that we have at the office, I think supports a great culture.
Yeah, and there's something to be said too about not just how we set up the office, but also how we set up our calendars. So every week we take a Friday, usually in the afternoon, and we either do something in the office where we just say, hey, we're shutting down the computers, we're turning everything off, and we're just going to hang out together, just as friends.
Which is hard to do.
Which
it's hard
really
to get people to turn off their computers, which is great because we have people who want to work.
Everybody loves, and that's the thing. We hired people that want to work just like we want to work.
They're tenacious.
Yes.
Core value number 1.
Come on, baby. But then, so every other month we do in-house, and then every other month we do out-of-house. So like A couple Fridays ago, we went to Chewy's, a local Mexican restaurant.
We had a happy hour.
And had a happy hour. And it was great. It's a good time. And the thing that we say often is, look, you're going to spend more, and you alluded to this, Ken, you're going to spend more time here with these people than you do with your family, your loved ones, right? And so you better like each other. I mean, really. And so for us, we're really... we're always about how can we hang out? How can we have more time together? What are some things that we can do that we can embrace as, hey, this is good, healthy for us to be doing to really build some of that camaraderie? Some other things we do too is we have a culture that we got this from Brene Brown, but I think it's a really good thing, an ouch, oops conversation.
I was just about to bring that up. There you go.
Well, good. Why don't you talk about what that is?
Well, we started by talking about some of the positive things that happen in office. We create this great environment. It's fun. It's kind of open. And we realize that not everybody can run and set up an office like we do. However, just taking those little things about trying to figure out ways to make your office fun and inviting, even if it's the littlest things in the world, little desktop games or Rubik's Cubes or anything you can think of that you can give to people just to take mental breaks or something every once in a while. But there's also the other side of the culture, which is addressing challenges in culture or conflict in culture. And we've been very good, I think, about trying to communicate to the people that we work with that, hey, it's an open door and open communication policy. We encourage people, if anybody ever has an issue or a challenge, or they think maybe somebody didn't do something quite right, or maybe there was an insult that passed that was inadvertent, we encourage people to approach one another and say, hey, I want to talk about this, or this kind of happened, or something happened and I'm not sure, I need you to clarify for it. And that's easy to say in one way, but it's not easy to get everybody to do, because everybody has different personalities. They may not be secure about doing that. So one of the things we did is we employ the ouch, oops process, which is sometimes people will say things and somebody might get their feelings hurt. It's just inadvertent. It's going to happen sometimes. For us, because we lead in what we do, we often have to tell people what to do. And sometimes people don't want to be told what to do, and they can have a defensive reaction or something like that. So it's not always bad. Sometimes people need to work it out, but sometimes you might say something that really gets somebody's goat. And the last thing we want is for somebody to say something, someone to get pissed off, and then both people walk in opposite directions and go back to work, and then it festers and it grows and they push it down, and then it just becomes resentment over time. It's the worst thing that can happen. So because it's hard for people to sometimes initiate their own communication, we've given them this tool of ouch and oops. If somebody says something to somebody else in the office and that person takes offense to it or is hurt by it or some negative reaction, they have the ability to just say, ouch. And by saying ouch, it signals to the other person, hey, you might not have meant it, but something you just said really got to me, and it was beyond business. It really hurt me in some way. And I need to let you know that. And the person who did it, unless they're an asshole and they meant to do it, which we never want in our company, their response is supposed to be an acknowledgement of that and saying, oops. And oops means, hold on a second. I didn't mean to do that. Because there's no reason, and that's the culture of our company. There's no reason anybody in our company should ever do or say anything that's personally offensive to another. We hope that it's always going to be inadvertent some way, because it comes back to marketing communication. There's always two messages, right? There's the message you put out there, but then there's the message that's heard by the audience. And they're not always the same thing. And in marketing, you got to try and make the disparity between those two as little as possible. In the office, it's the same thing. I might say something to you. You say, ouch. My first reaction is going to be, oops, because I don't know what I did, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to communicate. And hopefully that gives both people an acknowledgement of what just transpired and gives them a platform or a foundation from which it can then be explored and exercised. And when I say exercised, I mean with the O, like getting it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the reason why that's so crucial is because we all are humans. Right. And sometimes you can sit. I mean, you and I have had conversations where we've just missed each other. Right. And we've ouch oopsed each other. And it's helpful to do that because we like each other. We're best friends. Like
Right.
we're best
We're
friends.
brothers.
Yeah. And so it's like, man, if we hurt each other, then of course other people are going to hurt each other. Of course that's going to be a thing. Of course that's going to be a challenge. And so, yeah, to your point, how do we not let that fester and become just this resentment that builds up? That's why people leave jobs.
It's that buildup of resentment. You have to have a steam valve.
Right.
You have to be adult enough to let it out.
Yep.
And if you're out there listening to this and you work with other people and all that, it's not always easy to do. But if you can be the person that stands up and says, time out, wait a second, let's talk for a second, because there's no way that I'm trying to create a hurtful or hateful relationship here. And if I've done something, or if you've done something, let's just talk about it. And the people have to be adult enough and resilient enough that they can get through it. You have to know, just like I'm sure this is the same in all relationships too. You know, you have to know that you want to come out on the other side victorious and harmonious.
Yep.
And if you can just get through the mire of that swamp together and understand, oh shit, there's challenges here. I just stuck my foot in the mud and you just twisted your ankle and you're not walking fast enough. You got to get through the dark woods to get out to the other side. And you have to be willing to go on that journey together.
Yeah, another key thing outside of the ouch oops thing that we've kind of made sure to do is we never ask staff to do something that we haven't done.
Oh, absolutely.
And so like we have some menial tasks, right, that we ask staff to do that at some point either you or I or both of us have done before.
It's literally everything from literal housekeeping,
yes,
like trash and dishes and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, all the way up to writing long form copy for clients and whatever else it might entail.
Yeah, and so that's always a key thing is I can, you and I or whomever can just say, look, I know this is kind of a crappy task and I know that it's kind of a drain. Let me tell you how important it is, and I've done this, so I'm just going to tell you I acknowledge that this is painful, but it's really important. Here's why. And that really builds a lot of credibility too, because people are like, oh man. And something that's happening as we've had more staff come in, some interns leave, and they're looking for jobs now in the open market. They're kind of coming back to us and they're saying things like, I'm looking at other agencies around town and I won't go there because I've got a friend and the creative director's a monster there, and I've interned at that place before I was here and their company culture is terrible. And so then you and I get curious, core value number 2, and we go, well, what do you mean? And so as we go through that, one of the things that we've really identified is most companies don't have a tolerance for people's authenticity, right? And that's our 4th core value. And that authenticity being, they don't care what's going on in your personal life. They just want you to show up, do your job, shut up, go home, right? And they don't care. And there's a different level of caring at Rethink, at the agency, that we are identifying as unique. And that people are saying, we have some staff that have friends at other agencies that are still there around town and whatever. And they said, whenever I came to you and I was emotional, I was telling you about my personal life, and I started crying in your office, and you sat with me for a while and you heard me out, and then we moved on. They were like, I have friends that they were like, that doesn't happen.
I mean this in the best way possible, and I really do. There's a lot more crying at Rethink than any other place I've ever worked at.
Yeah.
And it's usually it's not because people are oppressed. They're not crying because in some way they feel bad about what's happening to them at work. They're crying usually because they're sharing something in their personal life. They're sharing what's going on. They're trying to release stress. I mean, there's so many things that go on. And the fact that they feel free, that they can come into our offices and sit down and say, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. Is really a testament, again, to the culture that we've created. Again, I have to acknowledge, not every business can do this. Not every business has the ability to sit down. Not every business has sort of the emotional intelligence or time to embrace every employee and find out what's happening in their personal life. But again, we're in the marketing business and we're in a creative business. And we've created a culture that supports creative people. And creative people need to have those kinds of outlets. They need to be, you can, when you go all the way up the scale in creativity and you go to superstars, Like, I'll use Prince for an example, right?
Yeah.
Prince is a genius, okay? Was a genius. But obviously, he's got some crazy behaviors, right?
Right.
He built a home that he never left. He got involved with, at the end, all the whatever drugs or anything that people need to support themselves. They live crazy lifestyles. And those people that are not creative like that, they look at it just as oddities. But the truth of the matter is, if you're going to support that kind of right brain thinking, there's a lot of stuff that goes along with it. And even at the lower levels of creative execution, if we're not geniuses like Prince, but we're graphic designers or we're copywriters or things like that, we are so busy being empathetic and emotional so that we can learn how to communicate with others that we have to be able to let that out. We have to let it grow. It can't just be put down while we move boxes from A to B.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's key. You may not be at a place where you can do that, but you may be. And you can try.
You can try your best. Just understand the humanity of where you're working.
Right. Yeah, I was a guy that almost everybody knows, Gary Vaynerchuk. I saw something. I don't watch a whole bunch of his stuff, but I caught something the other day, and he was talking about, I've had people ask me, would I hire an asshole creative director, someone who's like a creative genius? And he said no. He's like, because I don't want an asshole on my team. He's got a very successful agency, multiple businesses that are doing phenomenally well. And he's like, absolutely not. He goes, I want to hire the person that's hungry and that's emotionally intelligent and that can work with other people, and we can train them up to be great. And that's kind of the philosophy that we had already taken before I had seen that. And I think that's so valuable. Too often, we think about team cultures in sports, right? The New England Patriots are a dynasty. What do? They don't have the most talented players. They've got the best coach. They've got probably the best quarterback ever. But then it's a bunch of dudes. Like, they find smart guys that work hard. That's their MO. And every now and again, they'll take a flyer. They'll try a guy that's talented, and they'll say, well, let's see if you can come into the culture and play ball the way that we play ball, and can you straighten up? And if they can, great. They'll use your talent. But if you can't, they will cut you so fast. They don't care, because they know that the team is better off with a team cohesive mind. People that are like-minded, they're like, we're going to get after it. We're going to be smart football players. And then what's fascinating is some of the guys that are great there, they get a big contract somewhere else, and they're never the same player.
The puzzle doesn't come together the same.
Because is it just that Bill Belichick, their coach, is that much of a genius? No. It's that he understands this person plays this role. And when you ask them to play a different role on a different team outside of that culture, they're not going to thrive. And the same is true for business. And so as you start to think about if you have a team or if you don't have a team or you're going to build into a team, thinking about finding those people that are great, that do fit your core values, and that really are a cultural fit and may not have the talent, the CV that would go along with the position that you want. Yeah, are they hungry? Do they get after it? Are they kind? Those can be much better markers for success.
I think one of the things it was an eye-opener for me when we started working together, although people have done this with me previous to us working together, is all the personality testing that everybody does now.
Yeah.
The DISC assessment, the cultural index. What else is there?
We do Colby,
right.
We do...
There so much can be figured out by these things, by looking at them. Now, whether you believe the accuracy or not, that the thing is they work because they give you a relative scale. It does, as long as everybody in your company takes the same one, it doesn't matter how genuinely accurate they are, because they're all taking the same one, and then you can work relatively off one another based on the results from that particular test. And what we've been able to do is, because we want people that fit our culture, not just people that can move stuff from A to B, and we don't want that asshole creative director, we give personality tests. And once we see how people respond to those tests, we're able to look at them and say, oh, you know what? This person is probably better doing this job at the agency. Or this person needs a little bit more oversight in this particular area, or this person needs a little bit more emotional support in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's allowed us to really sort of tailor our actions and behaviors in such a way that it creates more harmony and creates growth in the employees, rather than putting people in seats that they don't fit just because we liked them in the interview, thought they were great, and they were super energetic, and we were like, yeah, let's hire them. We have a little bit more insight, and it allows us to build that culture a little bit with a little more solidity.
Yeah, and one of the things that we are careful of too, some of those tests we use to relate to the staff and to one another. So we take it and we go, okay, one of the ones that we use is called the Enneagram. And it's been great for my marriage, actually. My wife and I use it because it tells you how people respond in stress, how people are in a normal state, and then how they are in health. And that's really helpful whenever we're interacting with a staff member and we're like, why are you acting not normal for you? Oh, you must be stressed. And you're acting like this other personality type, which is your stressful personality. Oh, that's fascinating. Okay, now I know how to address you better. Now we can ask the question, hey, what's going on? Is there anything that you want to tell me about what's going on at home and your personal life? And those lead to good conversations. The other thing that we are careful with these personality tests, though, too, is that we never pigeonhole somebody based off just the test. We just go, hey, these are your test results. What do you think about that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Yeah, I do agree.
And we share the results with them.
Absolutely.
And we share other people's results to say, hey, just so you know, this is who you're working with and this is what's going on. Yeah. It's not secretive.
No. And that's what's so valuable is like whenever we have staff and they're like, well, I'm struggling with this. I'm like, well, let's look back at this test that we took. Look at how you relate to me. Look at how you relate to Ken. Look at how you relate to some other people on your team. And they go, oh, man. So that's why when I have this conversation with that person, they respond in this robotic way. They're not actually being robotic. They just keep their emotions on lockdown. Yes, that's exactly why. And it's like the world opens up for them in their mind, and they have this epiphany. And wow.
I used to get pissed because one of our employees would leave every day or come in every day, and they always walk past my office. I can see the front. And as they walk in, I would be like, good morning. Or as they left, I'd be like, see you later. And they would not respond. It was like the hardest freaking thing in the world to pull a good morning or a hello out of them. And for me, I knew better, but I knew that my initial reaction was fuck them.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, man, that person's not nice at all and this and that. But because we've been through all this stuff and we know about culture and all personality tests, I stopped that immediate reaction from manifesting in myself. I knew that it was deeper than that. Now, what that tells me is most people who don't have the insights that we have might stop at that point. And all of a sudden that resentment's going to build up. It's going to inhibit the culture. It's going to become a cancer in there. But then we looked at the personality test. You brought one out. You laid it, as I told you this, you laid it down. You go, yeah, no, look, she doesn't want to say anything. She's just going to keep it totally quiet because it's hard for her to do that. She's not trying. It has nothing to do with you. It's hard for her to come out of her shell like that, to do that. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, now I see why. So now there's no issues. But you can, if you don't have those insights, boy, it can lead to some real trouble.
Yeah. Well, man, we've covered a lot of stuff. Is there anything that you want to talk about, Ken, that like on the company culture side or workplace culture that do you think we haven't hit on?
No, the truth of the matter is I think you can talk about company. There's so many aspects to it, culture, from the outside, from the inside, how you implement it, how people receive it. We could talk about it a lot, but I think just understanding that company culture comes from a humanistic approach and understanding that your workplace is an organism. It's not just a bunch of individual people. The whole thing is an organism, and everybody is some part of an enzymatic reaction in that organism. And if one part's not working, then the whole organism is sick. So you got to kind of understand and take a look at and embrace the entire human experience of everybody in your company. And I think that's a good foundation from which to build culture.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the only other thing that I would add to this is, something that we routinely do, and it usually falls on my shoulders because of the role that I play. I routinely ask people, hey, what do you need? What do you want? And at first that throws people off because they don't know how to respond. And what we found in asking that question, a lot of times people haven't asked themselves that question. And so it really drives them to self-reflection. And sometimes, and usually what we say when we ask, what do you need? What do you want? We're really referring to the workplace. Interestingly enough, that has led some staff members to understand and go thinking outside of work, what I want. They come to a different conclusion of what do they want.
We actually had an employee leave.
Yeah, because they realized
they wanted to be a parent.
They wanted to be at home with their kid. Great. Tough for us, great for them. And it's having that open mindset and that, hey, this is all for the good of everyone. And how can we do this? And sometimes we have to be really, really pointed, right? With the question. So sometimes we're like, do you need a raise? Do you want a raise? That's okay. Do you just need a new laptop? Do you just want the air conditioning to be set at 74 instead of 72? What do you want? And they start to think through it and they go, oh, yeah, you know what would be helpful? And they throw something out. And it's usually something that's so innocuous. It's so simple that we just buy it on the spot. We get it on the spot. We bring it in. We immediately change something. So something that we're going to test out next week is we're going to start doing quiet hours Tuesday through Friday for an hour and a half in the morning time. Why? Because people are like, we just want to have uninterrupted time for an hour and a half just to know that we can all focus and not have somebody come tap us on the shoulder because we are such an open culture like that. And so we're like, okay, cool. Let's try it. Let's see if it works. It may not work, but let's see. And so it's always asking those questions and being open, I think, is also a thing that really helps. So Ken, I've loved this conversation. Thanks so much, man. And it's been fun.
Yeah, we have a good culture.
Yeah, it's been good. Well, hey, guys, thanks for listening and or watching the show. Do us a favor, leave us a review or rating on iTunes. It really helps to grow the show. Until next time, catch you later, junkies.
Brand. Brand.